It's funny how sometimes the most powerful, most relevant lessons for our lives today can come from the most unexpected places. So, for this explainer, we're going to go way back. I'm talking about 2,700 years to unpack the story of a terrified king, a really terrible decision, and a timeless question about how we all handle a crisis.
And really, that's what this all boils down to, isn't it? When your world is shaking, when everything feels like it's on the line, where do you put your ultimate trust? It's a question a king had to answer back then, and it's one we all face today. All right, so let's meet the man at the center of this whole story, King Ahaz of Judah. Now, he ruled for about 20 years, but his story in the ancient texts gets a ton of airtime, which kind of makes you scratch your head and ask, why? I mean, check this out. Ahaz's predecessor, King Uzziah, had this long, super successful reign. We're talking over half a century. But his whole story gets wrapped up in just 7 verses. Then you have Ahaz, who ruled for less than half that time, and he gets 20 verses. The authors are practically screaming at us, hey, you need to pay very close attention to what went down here. And here is the crisis they wanted us to see. 2 kings from neighboring kingdoms, Pekah and Rezon, they team up, and they march south with a single, brutal goal: wipe Ahaz and his entire family line right off the map. They wanted to install their own guy on the throne. The text says the whole kingdom was terrified. This wasn't just some border dispute. This was for all the marbles. This was an existential threat. So what does Ahaz do? Faced with this overwhelming fear, he doesn't double down on the faith and traditions of his people. No, he does the complete opposite. He goes full-on pagan. He starts performing these horrific rituals, including sacrificing his own child, and brings back all the idol worship that good kings before him had worked so hard to get rid of. Fear just drove him to torch his own foundation.
But his panic wasn't just spiritual. It was political, too. And this next move he makes, man, it reveals just how deep his desperation and his total lack of faith really ran.
Ahaz cooks up what he thinks is this absolutely brilliant plan. He goes into the temple, into his own palace, and strips them bare of all their gold and silver. And he sends this treasure as a massive bribe to Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, who was the regional superpower. The message was basically, I'm your servant, I'm your son, come and save me. And this is just a perfect way to describe the absolute insanity of his plan. The source material we're looking at uses this fantastic analogy. See, Assyria wasn't some friendly ally. They were the apex predator of the ancient world. In his terror, Ahaz invited the cat into the middle of the mice fight, thinking it would only go after the other 2 mice. And here is the tragic, almost comical punchline to the whole thing. We know from historical records and from the prophet Isaiah, who was right there at the time, that Assyria was already on its way to conquer those nations. Ahaz panicked and paid a king's ransom for something that was going to happen for free. His fear was so great, he trusted his worst enemy more than any other possible outcome. So you see, the biblical writers aren't telling us this story just because it's an example of bad foreign policy. They're zooming in on this moment because it exposes a much deeper, more fundamental failure. And here is the official diagnosis. The prophet Isaiah actually goes to Ahaz and tells him, stand firm. Don't be afraid, just trust God. He even offers him a divine sign, any sign in the universe he wants to prove it. But Ahaz refuses. He says, oh, I would never want to put the Lord to the test. It sounds so spiritual, doesn't it? But it's just a cover-up. It's a classic case of using pious language to mask total unbelief. His words sounded holy, but his actions screamed, I'd rather hire the cat. Okay, and this is where a 2,700-year-old story suddenly feels like it was written yesterday, because we all face crises, right? Big and small, and we all have to choose what or who we're going to trust. So the question for us becomes, what are our Assyrias? What are the cats we hire to solve our problems? The source material points out a few modern options. Maybe it's the ultimate belief in ourselves, that whole, if you can dream it, you can do it mindset. Or maybe it's money, thinking that's our ultimate security. It could be institutions or just going along with popular opinion. Basically, it's anything that promises to take away our immediate fear, just like Assyria did for Ahaz. And the source gives us another brilliant analogy for this. When we put our ultimate trust in these things that can and do fail us, it's like we're standing in a downpour with an umbrella meant to protect us, but we're busy shooting holes in it. It feels like we're taking control, but what we're actually doing is destroying our own safety.
But Ahaz's story isn't quite over. After Assyria does exactly what it was always going to do and crushes his enemies, Ahaz takes a victory lap to Damascus to meet the king he hired, and what he sees there leads to the final and most telling act of his reign.
So he's in Damascus, the capital of the victors, and he sees this huge, impressive pagan altar, and he's completely captivated. He's thinking, wow, whatever gods these guys are worshiping, they're clearly the ones who get stuff done. So he immediately has detailed blueprints drawn up and sends them back to Jerusalem with a simple order. Build an exact copy of this in our temple. Now, what is really going on here? Ahaz isn't having some sort of profound religious conversion, not at all. He's shopping for a better technique. He saw worship not as a relationship, but as a transaction. He figured the rituals they were doing back home weren't working, so he decided to import a new formula that he thought would bring him the success and power he craved. And this brings us right to the core difference in worldview here. Ahaz had the pagan view. Rituals and symbols are tools you use to manipulate a god to get what you want. But the biblical view, as laid out in the source, is the polar opposite. Rituals and symbols don't create a result. They express the reality of a heart that is already in a certain place. And that's the beautiful, nuanced point of it all. The symbols themselves mean absolutely nothing if the heart behind them is rotten. But, and this is just as critical, a sincere heart needs those physical, tangible symbols to express itself. It's not one or the other, it has to be both. Which leaves all of us with a final thought to carry with us. Whether it's a religious ritual, a national tradition, or just a family custom, we all have powerful symbols in our lives. The story of King Ahaz challenges us to ask, are we using them to express something true and real? Or are we, like him, just hoping they'll become a magic formula to control our fears?